So we are delighted to welcome Priyanka Sharma Kaintura, an acclaimed author, speaker and leader in brand reputation and culture communication. With over 20 years of corporate experience across global organizations, Priyanka's expertise lies in shaping narratives and fostering impactful communication. Her debut book, My Jiffies, was widely appreciated by leading media houses, with the second, Mahadevi, The Unseen Truth Behind Existence, has received global endorsements from figures like Dr. Shashi Tharoor and Dr. Kiran Bedi, known for contextualizing Hindu mythology for modern audiences. Priyanka's writing bridges ancient wisdom with contemporary relevance. A recipient of multiple accolades, including the Indira Priyadarshini Award 2023, Priyanka's work has garnered global recognition for campaigns like #SheMakesItWork. She is also a sought-after speaker and contributor to leading publications. Join us as we dive into Priyanka's remarkable insights and her celebrated book, Mahadevi. Let's give her a warm welcome. So, Priyanka, I have a few questions for this interaction, and I'll begin with, in Mahadevi, you explore all 9 forms of Durga, which represent various aspects of feminine power. How do you see these forms reflecting the different dimensions of womanhood across time and culture?
So I don't know how many of you have had a look at the book, but I'll give a brief introduction of the book first.
Sure.
So the first part of the book has 9 stories, which are a retelling from the ancient texts like Puranas. It begins from the beginning of the universe when she gives birth to the universe, and that form is called Kushmanda. And then there is Bhuvaneshwari, the next form, which takes care of the universe, which is like the guardian of the universe. And then Saraswati is born, and then Shivangi takes form, and Sati and Uma and Ambika, Maya, Bhagavati, a lot of forms, 9 different forms. So those forms are explained in the part 1 in a way which in a modern language where everybody can understand and can probably say that, oh, I thought it's mumbo jumbo, but there is a scientific reason or a philosophical reason behind what is being told. That is the idea behind part 1. And then part 2, within the same book, is the same 9 forms visible in today's times. So if there is a Saraswati in part 1, there is a Saraswati in part 2. The Saraswati in part 2 is the same definition that I've explained in part 1. Bhuvaneshwari in part 1, Bhuvaneshwari in part 2, Ambika, Maya, so on and so forth.
All these forms.
So to answer your question, that how are these contextualized in today's times? So if you see a woman who gives priority to knowledge more than anything else, in fact even more than love, then that is Saraswati. So you see a Saraswati and you would know, oh, she is the one. If there is a woman who inspires even without moving a finger, she just sits in front of you and inspires Maya, then she is Maya. And then sometimes the same woman can be multiple different things. She can exhibit Saraswati in one form, Ambika in another form. If there is a woman who stands up for what is right, even if nobody is moving a finger, she would get up and speak for herself or speak for what should be spoken about, then she is Ambika. If someone is slaying Mahishasura or Shumb Nishumb of today's times, then she is Ambika. So it's only in the eye of the bearer whether you can spot one or not.
Right.
You can see, and sometimes even in men, why just in women? What is Bhagavati? What is Mahadevi? Mahadevi at the end of the day is energy. It is a massive energy which shows in small fragments in men and women of today and always has been. It is only in the eye of the bearer whether you can see it or not.
Great. So as you mentioned about the part 2 of the book, that introduces fictional stories based on modern women.
Yeah.
With a few rooted in true events.
Yeah.
How did you balance the sacredness of mythology with the realities of modern life in these stories? Can you share one story that was especially meaningful or challenging for you to write?
I can see, I think Maya was challenging for me.
In the modern context?
In the modern context. Maya was challenging. And yes, to keep the balance, yes, it is sacred. As much as it is sacred, Sanatan Dharma is very liberal.
Okay.
So, if you really understand the meaning of the text and don't go only by the stories, you will understand that it's actually very liberal. It is sacred, but in the same breath, it's liberal. Okay. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. It really gives you the liberty to look at it in the way of, in the modern context and find those qualities around you. So, but then I had to be careful because sometimes people misunderstand and misinterpret. Right. Even when you're saying it in the right way, people can read it differently. Because it is more, a writer can write to best of his or her intentions, but a lot depends on the reader.
Right.
Or what frame of mind the reader is in. What experiences the reader has had in his or her life. So Maya was most challenging because Maya anyway is most misunderstood. 100%. People are, ye to moh Maya hai, go away from it. No, it's not like that. Maya is what makes life worth living at the end of the day. If there was no Maya, there'd be no wealth, there'd be no love, there'd be no happiness, there'd be no small little joys of buying a piece of jewelry, buying a piece of fashion. All that is Maya. And people aspire. Why do people get married? Why do people make babies? Why does anybody do anything in life? To seek happiness, and happiness is Maya.
Okay.
So writing Maya was most challenging because if you read the part 2 and you read Maya, you will understand that it is about a man who falls in love with a woman who he's never ever spoken to. You've read the book, so he's never spoken to her. He's only seen her from a distance and has fallen in love with her. So much so that no one can replace her.
Right.
In his life. And it has happened. It's based on true it has happened. It's based on true facts.
Okay.
So it's not that I came up with. It's not a fictional story. So somebody who watches somebody from a distance can fall in love so tremendously and hopelessly that sometimes that person is irreplaceable, and even the absence is irreplaceable. Not just the presence. Even the absence is irreplaceable at times, and that's Maya. So many people want a boy for a baby, desperately and hopelessly, and they keep trying and trying and trying. That's Maya. Unless you get into the Maya, it's very difficult to come out of it, because only when you're totally tangled, you find your way out of it. You need to be totally in it to know what Maya is, and then the same Maya becomes the path for liberation at the end of it, because she is Lakshmi at the end of it.
Right.
And she sits in Vaikunt, which is the path for liberation, salvation, moksha.
Right. So in Mahadevi, you describe the roles of enablers and doers, with Saraswati being the enabler of Brahma and Lakshmi the enabler of Vishnu. Could you elaborate on the significance of these roles in the context of goddesses' relationships and how this dynamic can be understood in today's world, especially in terms of women supporting and empowering others in various roles?
So this is the theme of the book, if I were to say, to establish the fact that whether it's a god or goddess or a man and a woman, there is a relationship of doer and enabler. The man is always the doer and woman is always the enabler. That's why they say you should get the right match when you get married to somebody. The woman's role, unknowingly or knowingly, is that of an enabler of whatever the man does. She, for instance, when Brahma was creating this world, he fashioned Saraswati, because Saraswati is that form which not only gives knowledge and Vak Shakti. Vak Shakti is the Shakti of speech. She not only does that, but she's also somebody who separates water from milk. She's that smart or that erudite or that learned that she can see what is it in the real sense of the word. So she's the one who enables Brahma's endeavor of creating the work, because he was creating everything from scratch, from every blade of grass to humans to birds to everything, and she was the force behind it. So what is really an enabler? Enabler is Like a software is to the hardware, like there is a bulb but the electricity flows through it and only then the bulb starts really doing its work. That is the work of an enabler. The gadget is meaningless unless there is energy in it, whether it is run by battery or electricity or solar energy. The energy is what makes it work, and that energy is the feminine power, the divine feminine, which is present in not only women, I keep repeating, but also in men.
Right.
And she is the force which makes Brahma work. Similarly, Vishnu, who is, in my view, the chief operating officer of the world, and he is the one who takes care of everything, the functioning of the world. And that cannot happen without wealth. Can you run a household without money? You can't. No. So how is Vishnu supposed to run an entire universe without the force of commerce? That's why Lakshmi sits with Vishnu and Saraswati sits with Brahma. Similarly, Shakti sits with Shiva because Shiva is the destroyer. He puts an end to everything. And that happens only. What do you need when you want to put an end to something? Can wealth do it? Can knowledge do it? Only Shakti, only influence can do it. People don't even know when to leave a job when the time is over. Somebody has to influence it. Most of the times it is a very difficult situation which pushes us to leave something. But that should not have happened, no? But it is like that. Only Shakti makes things move, which is why she sits with Shiva. So every force of divine feminine has a significance, which is why she sits with a certain type of god, because she is the enabler of that god.
Right.
That's how it works, which is why people say that you should get married to the right kind of person, you should have the right camaraderie. It doesn't mean only one thing. It means that do you have that kind of a bond where you make the other person rise from mundane and do better things in life, and it goes both ways.
Right.
You know, Saraswati is called a Saraswati because she sits with Brahma. She gets her moniker, her name becomes significant only when she sits with Brahma. Otherwise, people wouldn't know who Saraswati is.
Right.
That's why the significance.
Right. Great answer. Mahadevi merges mythology with contemporary short stories where ancient lessons are explored through the lives of modern women. Do you see this book as a reflection of your own spiritual journey? How has your personal connection to mythology and womanhood shaped the book's themes and stories?
I don't like to call it mythology because I don't think it's myth. Honestly, that's the first thing I want to establish. It is our ancient history. It's our history, everyone's history, because it is the history of the genesis of the universe. And it is so old that it's not written anywhere, and that is why we do not call it history. So it's not mythology, and it is something that you experience when you look at things closely. And yes, it is, how do you become spiritual? You become spiritual only when you watch things closely. When you see how beautiful the bird is and how what contribution the bird has to the ecosystem. If you go close to nature, which is also called Prakriti, which is the name of, Shakti is another name.
Right.
You know, Shakti is called Prakriti in men. Have you heard that? The Prakriti and Purush? That's what usually Shakti is called. And as you go closer to nature, you will realize that you're becoming spiritual. I think the people who are most closest to nature are very spiritual. They don't even know. They're not religious, but they're spiritual. People who love animal life, you will see that they're very empathetic. They're very, they may not know the religious mumbo jumbo. They will always be more spiritual than the other people. And I think when you write a subject like this, and as you deconstruct the stories, it becomes more and more clearer to you how insignificant you are in the entire scheme of things, how small you are. And I think that's the first step of spirituality. Right. Knowing how insignificant you are. And you're just doing your small little thing in everyday's in a daily life, and you're thinking that you're doing something really big, the realization of that makes you spiritual, and that's the beginning of any spiritual journey. And I'm just a beginner.
Great. So, what role do you believe storytelling plays in preserving culture and heritage, particularly when it comes to female-centric narratives like Mahadevi? How can storytelling help bridge the gap between ancient and modern world for today's readers?
I think storytelling is the vessel in which everything is taken forward. When, if you read Ramayana, you understand that Sita had given her Chudamani to Hanuman when he'd found her in the Ashok Vatika. One thing that comes to your mind is, oh, they were using Chudamani at that time. So you get to know that Chudamani is given by a husband to his wife on the first night. That's how it happens. So so it's just a vessel. When you told a story, you are also told many things associated with it. So when you read about the Shivratri and the wedding between Shiva and Shakti, and you realize the kind of foods that were made, you realize that the kheer was made at that time in such a way. Food history gets traveled, fashion history gets traveled, languages get traveled, everything gets traveled through stories.
Right.
So when even the value system, how Bharat conducted himself when Kekai did what she did, how he followed the dharma of a brother, or even Mahabharata has millions of stories within it.
Right.
So all these stories the culture has reached us through those stories, and I think the stories is the vessel in which everything gets carried forward, and I think the culture gets passed with it.
Right. So before I pose the next question, I want to read my favorite part of the book. Okay, so there's a chapter Sati, where the form of the Durga is Sati, and there's a dialogue between Shiva, which is in the form of Rudra, and he's I'd say showing his love, what his love means to him. Okay, so he describes three forms: Bhog, Shakti and Darshan. So listen to me. When you make me subject of your intimate desires, you cannot fathom how fortunate I feel to be the man to a woman of your radiance, elegance and beauty. When your presence and nearness ignite passion within me, you become Kamakshi. I feel a massive surge of love for you. That is Bhog. And then he says, the second form of love that fills me is when I feel an assured influence over you. The dominion you gifted to me out of sheer grace. A mighty powerful woman who runs the planetary systems, holds the universe together, rides a lion, dreaded by the evil, adored by the gentle, whose mind is swifter than lightning, becomes a simple girl in my company. How dignified you are to disremember all that authority and surrender yourself in my arms. It is you who allows me to question you, pester you, take you for granted, and even dominate you at times. It is mesmerizing to see Bhagavati turned into a demigod only for me. But then it is still more enthralling how at times you turn into Ambika and wield brutal weaponry to defend me or tie sacred threads on my wrist to protect me from evil like a mother would do to a child. Both these forms grant me a certain sweet power over you. This influence makes me feel the love beyond the body. This is the love called Shakti. And then there is when you turn into your primeval form as Kali, unafraid to show your darkness, untamed tresses, stripped self, intoxicated in ferocity, and dance on top of me. It becomes an unmatchable mix of raw power and defenselessness at the same time. Your fearlessness of being derided or judged is hypnotic to my mind. That is also the time you become Saraswati and show me the mirror of truth. It is you who empowers me with the grit to see the undressed prancing reality, and in that moment again, I feel a gush of love, the love of a beautiful mind. That is Darshan. So I like this is my favorite part of the book.
Thank you.
So in Mahadevi, Mahadeva's monologue about the three forms of love, Bhog, Shakti and Darshan, describes a deep, multifaceted connection with Sati. Bhog reflects physical attraction, Shakti speaks to the power dynamic in their relationship, and Darshan touches on an intellectual and spiritual connection. How do you see these forms of love relating to the modern understanding of relationships? In what ways do you think they challenge or reinforce conventional notions of love, power and equality?
I think everybody understands bhog these days, but they don't understand that bhog is not just sex.
Right.
Bhog is not that. Bhog is when you are when you get connected to another person at a level where no one else can. That is when the surge of love flows, and that kind of bhog is rare to find. But very few people understand Shakti and Darshan.
Right.
I would say the feminists, so-called feminists, do not understand Shakti because they believe dominating a man is the only way to live, and that is how they will get their due place in this wide world. That's not true. What Shiva, so before this, what Zishan has read, the question that Shakti asked to Shiva was, what is love? Explain to me. So Shiva tells Rudra, in his physical form is called Rudra. He explains what love is to him when he thinks of Shakti. Of Sati in her bodily form. So when he explains Shakti, he says that I know you are the most powerful entity of this universe. But when you come to me, how conveniently you forget who you are. You do not bring that to me. You do not bring that whole air of I am more powerful than you. Because Shiva somewhere deep down knows that even I could not kill Mahishasur and I had to call her. I, along with Vishnu, could not kill Mahishasur or Shumb Nishumb when we all failed in the battlefield, and she came and took charge, and in a minute she was done with everything else. He knows that. But when he's in the awe that even if you are that, and still when you come to me, you become so malleable and ductile, and you become like you're lesser than me. What kind of power is that? He's in awe of her. That only you can do this. It's impossible. So when I'm looking at feminists of today, they are not getting this. They're getting the opposite of this. They feel that Shiva should come and declare to the world that you are more powerful and I'm nothing. That's not happening. And that is not what we are told through our scriptures. We are told equality. We are told that you need to be a Shiva to know a Shakti, as much as you need to be a Shakti to know a Shiva. You will not understand Shiva if you're not a Shakti yourself. First become that, and only then start questioning who you are, what you are you bigger than me or am I smaller than you? Those things do not work unless you understand. And when it comes to darshan, that is the most complicated part, because that is the intellectual understanding, the spiritual understanding of your partner, where you are beyond the love of body, beyond the love of influence, and right at the level where you are understanding that even her darker side has a beauty. When she turns into a Kali with open tresses, and even when she's angry, she's beautiful. Even when she's drinking blood of asuras, she's gorgeous and I'm in her awe. That's the kind of love that, because you are then looking at her beyond the boundaries of everything and anything, and that is completely missing these days, and on both sides, on the man's side and on the woman's side, because we only want to see pretty things. If it is not pretty, it's not for me. Because somehow people give up on relationships when it stops becoming pretty, and nothing can remain pretty forever. We are not going to remain pretty forever. Our surroundings are not going to be pretty. The relationship is sometimes going to get ugly because we're going to put across certain points which probably will not be entertained by the person in front of us. So that kind of understanding, we're not where relationship is not based just on that. So when Shumb and Nishumb had to be killed, she was married and had 2 kids. Parvati, and she was Devatas didn't know what to do, and they were advised कि भाई no one else can help you, only she can help you, but you'll have to call her out because she's now married and she has kids, and I don't know if she's coming for a battlefield kind of a role or not. Like in today's times, a married woman who goes into the battlefield as an IPS officer or an army officer or something like that, or a commando, or a stealth operation somewhere. So she she was meditated upon. In those times, people didn't have telephones. They could meditate and talk to each other silently, without communication, without gadgets. So she was called upon, and she agreed. She said, okay, I will come and help you. She left everything at home, went to the battlefield and did her job. She did something nobody could. She knew only she can do it. So we have to understand the dynamics only when we read completely, and don't read things with a certain preconceived notion. When we have a notion about something, ye to sacred hai and this cannot be dealt with. No, it's not like that. Sanatan is not like that. That's the beauty of Sanatan. You can read it, and if you read Gita 10 times, you will find 10 new things every time. Because that is not because it is changing, it is because you are changing. You are living through your life and you're experiencing new things, which is why you're able to understand the new thing every time, which you didn't maybe 5 years earlier. Because at that time you didn't have that mindset, you didn't have that kind of knowledge or experience or hurt or happiness or some emotion or the other which you had not experienced before. But now you can. Yes. Similarly, so it is sacred, but at the same time, it is liberal. That's the most beautiful part of this. It gives you things, it gives you dimensions which no other book can, in my view.
Okay.
So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, perfectly. So your journey from a corporate career to become a full-time writer is fascinating. How has your background in brand communication influenced your approach to writing Mahadevi? Mm-hmm. Do you think there are lessons from your corporate experience that helped shape your narrative style or the themes of the book?
I think so, yeah. I was in communication and branding. I worked 20 years in corporate. And communication and branding, after a certain time, when you reach a certain place, is all about gathering research data, interpreting that data and bringing stories out of it for the brand or for the company or for the CEO or for the spokesperson. You pick up information, and for example, I did something called Monster Salary Index. My last job was with monster.com. So there's something called Monster Salary Index, which is a salary index. And it talks about salaries, compares salaries between industries, between genders, between demographies, states, and so on, and occupations, so on and so forth. But when I deep dived in it, I found something which was far more interesting than the salary comparison, which was the gender pay gap. It was one small thing out of 200 pages of the report, and that became such a big thing over a period of time that we did a press release on it every year, and every year newspapers only lapped that up. All media, that was the time more of newspapers and TV and less for online. It's there on online as well. But you would see that you pick up one small nugget of information and that becomes more valuable than the rest of it. Similarly, in this journey, I realized that it is all about the information that I have, the data, the books, the texts that we have, and picking up the right thing and making it meaningful for the audiences of today in the same way. You have so much. There are so many itihasa, Ramayana and Mahabharata is itihas, and so many other texts which are in various places. Like in the book, Sushil Pandit ji has written a preface and he said the same thing, that it's in various places. But putting it in one place, giving it a meaning is what you can do to the data, which is what I tried to do. And that, I think that skill came with me from corporate. Because I was only playing with data and information and communication. I think that helped.
Great. So finally, what would you say to readers who may be unfamiliar with the mythology of Durga but are curious about Mahadevi? How would you introduce the book to someone looking to explore the rich, layered world you have presented in the book?
I would say that even if you're not mythology, I don't call it mythology, but even if you, because that's the genre Amazon uses and the bookstores use, so I'm going to use the word mythology. Even if you're not a mythology reader, but if you are interested in knowing the history of the universe, if you're interested in knowing about the multiverse and everything that Marvel movies talk about, Or if you're interested in the dynamics of gods and goddesses, devatas and yakshas and all of that, and you want to understand which is where and who does what, this is the book. And most importantly, if you want to deconstruct womanhood in the right way, I've put all my whatever I knew and my life's experiences in this book to deconstruct it, to give the difference between when she's angry, she's an Ambika, how she's different from a Maya, from a Saraswati to Shivangi, who declares that I'm half Shiva, I'm a part of Shiva. Shivangi is Shiva's Ang. She has no qualms declaring I'm a part of him. I am not a separate person. I am his Ang, his part, his bodily part. Matlab, on one side, she's Shiva's Ang. On the other side, she's Ambika slaying people. So there is a whole spectrum of various things that a woman can do, should do, and is doing. Some have the potential of doing more, and a man to understand that and also invoke his own femininity once in a while, which is so, I don't know why, it has been so unrevealed and hidden over a period of time. I don't know why. I think it is time that men also invoke their own femininity, because that softer side brings about a lot of new things which the world needs and makes this world less masculine. I think this world is very masculine right now. When I say, I don't think it is a man's world, it's a masculine world. Because all the men are told to be masculine, and all the girls are also unfortunately becoming masculine to survive in this world. They are told to be like that, thoda strong bano, do this, don't do. So what happens? Unknowingly, you become more masculine than feminine. But we have to remember that when Durga used to go to the battlefield, she used to wear her weaponry and all of the things that, to slay any adversary, she used to wear all the weapons, but she would also wear her payal. She would never forget her payal at home, to remind herself that at the end of the day I'm a woman. And I have to keep, once I come back home, I am the soft side of this world. I am the prettier side of this world. But you have to invoke that inside. You have to tell women have to remind themselves to stay womanly, and men have to remind themselves to invoke feminine side once in a while. If you look at Krishna, imagine a Krishna in today's times. He wore the clothes that he wore, with a feather in his hair, and the way he stood in that Tribhangi Mudra, people would say, how feminine is he? Don't you think? The colors he used to wear, makeup, all of that, people would not probably appreciate it now, because we've been conditioned in a certain way. Our culture, Shiva and Shakti merged together to prove it to the world that we are okay with being this Ardhanareshwar form. We need to be slightly more feminine. The whole world needs to be slightly more feminine, so that the environment is more feminine and we become less masculine as a society. There is a research done on this, by the way, which describes how masculine the world has become, and even the matriarchal societies are masculine. Indonesia and Philippines, which are completely matriarchal, where the power resides with women, even they are masculine, because they display more power and strength and less softness. I think it's needed. And the book describes that. I'm not saying don't be strong. I'm not saying don't go out in the battlefield, don't fight for your rights, or don't go into the corporate and stand up for yourself and say, I want this. I'm not saying that. But coming back to your softer side is extremely important for both men and women.
Yes.
So that's the essence of the book.
Okay, so that's all we had for the interaction. So this is the book we were talking about, Mahadevi, the unseen truth behind existence.